You're tuned into the Indie Popcast, broadcasting from Echo Park, Los Angeles.
I hate my voice. So.
Why?
I think everyone's afraid of hearing their voice.
Doing radio for this long, you hate your voice?
Well, you know, it's funny. I hate
Yeah.
How was the show?
It was the time of my life.
I actually said no to that show.
What? But I'd never
know.
seen them live before.
I wasn't into it.
Were you at the
fucking
Joe Bros
blitzed.
party? We went for a little bit. The
No.
Beats one? No?
No.
I don't know, Nelson. What was the last show you went
I
to?
did
Maybe
go. I
it was.
I did go.
Maybe it was Harry Styles.
on Friday.
I like how we're both wearing forum shirts.
Surprise.
Somebody was like, I'm wearing the
Kanye. Oh
Kanye
God.
thing from the forum, and I was like, damn, I look like the
Forum.
forum threw up on me. So
Wait, is that a real shirt or bootleg? Because
no,
you like
real. I do like the bootleg, but
this
it
is
a real
bootleg.
one.
This one's bootleg.
It is. Oh, it looks good. I sometimes feel like the
Bootleg. looks
bootleg
good.
one is better sometimes.
Yeah,
No, because I waited too long, and then when I went to buy merch, because I was drunk at that time,
Yeah.
and I was like, I need Jonas Brothers merch, and then it was like, we're closed, and I was like, fuck, and then this guy's
Oh
like,
my
$5.
gosh.
I was like, yes.
That works. Yeah.
Well, we're already recording.
Okay. Okay.
So welcome. It's how many episodes is it? 5? Is this 5? This is 5. Thanks, Katie. That's why you're here, to keep me in check. Episode 5 of the Indie Podcast. My name is Sina. We're recording out of Indie Pop HQ in Echo Park. And I have two handsome gentlemen with me for this episode. Danny, who works here at Indie Pop, and Nelson, who is an outside guest, which I'm so excited that you came all the way from Culver City to hang out with us today.
Yay. Hi. Hi, everybody.
Hello, guys.
Well, you guys are really shy and quiet.
Being on the side is not that easy.
Well, the main topic of this episode is going to be DSPs. I want to talk about what is a DSP. You know, we live in the era of streaming music, Apple Music, Spotify, you have Amazon, like literally there's so many channels for music now, Tidal. And a new artist or somebody new in music, they might not understand what that world is like. It's changed so much, and it's changing every day, I feel like.
Yeah.
So it's just a general conversation about that digital world of music. You guys are both heavily in it in two different roles. So I thought that would be really interesting just to get your guys' take. And also, you know, not just new artists, but maybe somebody that's new to the music industry. Maybe they want to have an internship or a part-time or get a job or be in your guys' shoe at some point. And I'd just like to touch base on that. Is that cool?
Let's do it.
That
Sounds
is
great.
really cool.
Danny, I see you every day here in our office. You work for our label side.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to talk a little bit about your current job, and then we'll talk about like how you even got here?
Yeah, for sure. So at Indie Pop, I manage all of the streaming and sales. And so kind of what that entails is at the end of the project management chain, once a project has a budget and a release date and all the kind of finer moments are lined up, it comes my way and I send it out to partners to make sure that any key players in any of those areas are informed and aware of priorities for the label. And that way, you know, try and land and secure placements across the DSPs, whether like physical and it's, you know, billboards or anything of that nature, or digital on the actual platforms themselves.
So did you go to school for this specifically, or how did that come about?
No, to make a long story short, I went originally for
You can make a long story long. That's okay. That's why we're here. I want to know, like, because, you know, we get in these jobs in such different ways. There's not a point A to point B.
Sure. Well, I guess the college story is long. I started as an engineer, a mechanical engineer, switched over to a developing major at the time. At
Mechanical engineer, like working on cars?
No, an engineer. So I was looking to work on green tech. So I was going to be trying to design any kind of like green tech. So it was a mechanical engineer with the focus on chemical engineering.
Oh, wow. I didn't even know this about you. What the heck?
Crazy.
Oh, yeah.
And then you went from that into music?
I went into a major that was called interdisciplinary computer and arts major, which was I was the first graduating class, I want to say, or maybe the second. So it was pretty...
What school?
UC San Diego. And it was pretty strange. We did audio engineering, so I did all kinds of like, you know, audio signaling, mastering, mixing, recording, digital techniques, you know, all this kind of stuff. And then we did a lot of what was called speculative design, which is studying essentially the intersections between art, music, fashion, culture, and how they all meet. And I guess the most popular current form of that is Black Mirror, but they do it in a very dark way. But they kind of speculate how things are going to move forward in a really realistic manner, right? Like they're thinking maybe like 10, 15 years down the line. So when you see it, it's kind of eerie and you're like, whoa, this is actually probably going to happen. But there's a million applications for that aren't twisted and dark, right? It was kind of like trying to predict where things were going.
What the hell, Danny? I knew you were smart. Like I never thought you were dumb at all, but holy shit, like I didn't know that was your background at all.
Yeah.
How's this never come up?
I don't know.
We talk literally all day, every day.
I don't know.
So then doing that, you graduated, I'm going to guess you did.
Yeah.
And then what was your first job outside of college?
I interned at a publication called Nest HQ, which was a subsidiary of Nest, which was a subsidiary of Owsla, which was Skrillex's record label. Still is his record label.
Yeah, my baby brother put out music on Nest HQ. Shout out to Fox Ski.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I started off there interning under a great man named Jonah Berry, who's now at M Theory. And then maybe like 4 years ago, one of our main project managers left, and they hired me at Owsla, and we kind of developed that role into two. He kind of handled everything for the record label. I started doing distribution, and another guy, Andrew Leonta, started doing project management. I didn't know anything about distribution at all, and I was kind of just thrown into the fire. So I had to learn I was doing all the pitching, but I was also doing all the distribution. So I was coordinating with ADA and Atlantic at the time, scheduling all the records, doing all the label copy, organizing any kind of like ISRC, UPC codes, like all this kind of stuff. And I got thrown into it at a crazy time because we were putting out, that year we put out like 2 releases a week for like 9 months straight.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then eventually I was there for 4 years, and then now I'm here.
Wait, how long have you've only been here less than 6 months, right?
Yeah, since June.
Nice.
Yeah. Almost to 6 months.
Well, happy 6-month anniversary to us and Danny. So Nelson, we go way back. Also, I have to say, I have to bring this up just because the last time I talked to you was actually on Twitter. And it's funny that you're wearing a Harry Styles shirt because I tweeted, Zayn is greater than Harry. And I don't think you've ever responded to anything I've ever said so fast. And you were like, these are 2 different kinds of artists. I never said that his album was bad, bro, by the way.
I know. I was just saying, like, you can't even put them in the same tweet. You know, they're 2 different human beings that are making 2 completely different music. And one of them is actually going to the fans
And performing
The other one, has anxiety attacks and can't go out,
No,
Which
for
is
real.
true.
He won't do
Yeah.
it.
You're
Yeah,
talking
he
about
won't
Zayn.
do it. Yeah.
Zayn.
I haven't heard of him in forever.
No, he won't do it. He won't perform. He's put out music. His last album, though, is probably one of my favorite.
It's incredible.
Yeah, pop albums.
Which is
like
so
maybe ever.
sad to not see it live,
Yeah. How was Harry Styles live? Was it good?
Incredible. It was like one of those moments where, I've been doing this for 15 years and I like actually felt something. You know what I mean? I felt like
Usually you feel dead inside.
No. Well, I just go to a lot of things and I'm like, okay, you see one artist you kind of like, but he really put a lot of thought into what he was doing and how he did it in every aspect of the stage. And he even performed a One Direction song, which I was like, okay,
wow.
that's really cool. Like,
That's really
he's
cool.
not like,
Too good for that or past that.
exactly.
Yeah.
He knows what fans want. He wants to give them that.
Yeah,
And
it's
I
like
think
Justin Timberlake saying like he'll never do anything with NSYNC. Kind of,
Exactly.
yeah. Not to say that JT's too cool for that, but well, speaking of your last 15 years, I've known you
gosh.
for a lot of
Yeah.
that time. I feel like. So currently you're at Apple at Beats One. So
Yeah.
what's your role today?
I produce a show, which is an afternoon show for Beats One. So Beats One, for people that don't know what it is, Apple Music has a service and kind of is like a gift to people that have Apple Music or an iPhone. Like it's a free service, 24 hours around the world studio. They have one in London, they have one in New York, and they have one in LA. And basically, if you have an iPhone or Apple Music as an app, you can just click on the radio side and Beats One will be playing for you. And so it's really cool because, you know, I'll give you a little background on me. So I come from Kiss FM, and I started at what was then Clear Channel when I was 18, and I worked in terrestrial radio for 11 years of the 15 that I was working.
How did you start in radio? Were you an intern?
No. So basically how it was so crazy because at the time they didn't have interns. Everybody had to be like a part-time. And I live in Burbank, and I've always lived there, and that's where, you know, iHeart is. And my friend of mine was like, hey, let's apply to like a bunch of studios in Burbank because they have NBC, ABC, Warner Brothers. They have all of those stations there in studios. And so we made a resume which had nothing on it because I only had worked at Old Navy for 6 months. And we went around and gave our resumes, and I got a call back 2 months later. I had completely forgotten about it. And yeah, 2 months later, I got a job, which was answering phones for 3 hours on Saturdays. I fell in love with it. At that moment, I had been there almost a year. I was going to school and everything. And I was like, this is what I want. I was going to school to be a nurse. So like,
for real?
Yeah.
I could not imagine you as a nurse, Nelson.
Neither can I. But I was like, but my mom was like, hey, do something here, be a nurse. So I was like, okay. And
changing someone's like fucking bedpan. Can you even imagine?
Ew, no. And so then like my, so a year I did it. I like went and I was like, and then one day I said, I'm done. And I quit school and I went to my manager and I was like, hey, I'm here to do it 100% of the time. Let me know what you need when you need it. So I went from street team, picking up phones, to assistant producer, to then producing the Ryan Seacrest show. And I did that for 6 years for the morning show. And then from that, I went to start working for 2 music startup companies, Dash Radio and Wave Media. And the person that hired me when I was 18 was one of the heads at Beats One. And so then like they were creating a pop culture show for Beats One. And they were like, shout out Julie Pilot. And she was like, hey, there's this new thing. We want to create something that's kind of catering to like the TikTok, YouTuber, Instagram like world that is happening. And, you know, we want to bring you in for that. So can you help me create something? And we did. And so then now I'm here. I've been doing it. The show turns 2 years in May. And yeah, it's been an incredible journey.
Wow, you guys both have like such different stories, but it's so weird because you both didn't expect to be in these positions now, right? So was there a turning point? I mean, Nelson, you just said that you just randomly got this job in radio and then you said, I'm going to work in music now. Danny, did you have that same like epiphany at some point?
In college, when I switched majors, I knew I wanted to work in music. And then I'm in a band too and I make music, but I also knew, both of us knew early on that we weren't trying to hustle because we don't have, I guess, the other burden of like having a really hectic social life or going out too much. So we're like, we can work, make money, live in LA, and then, make music at night and on the weekends and kind of like live that life. So that's what we both do. The other band member of mine is at Loma Vista. He's an A&R. So yeah, definitely in college, there was that moment. Once I fell into streaming, it was cool because it was 4 years ago now, which has been a huge shift in the last 4 years. That was right at the moment where everyone started realizing how big of a priority it was going to actually be. Specifically at our label, we started really phasing out physicals. It was kind of like just really focused on digitals. It was kind of the post-YouTube, post all this kind of era. And then also when a lot of other DSPs became really relevant globally, and even in the US, right? I think for a while people were focusing on like just Spotify or whatever, but there's really a lot of them that have important roles globally and also in the US for different reasons and for different things.
So for anybody and a lot of people that don't know, what does DSP stand for?
I want to say it's digital sales platform or digital store, something like that. It
Digital
just has,
service provider?
no, because it was essentially a digital storefront, right? So it took the place of what CD stores and vinyl stores were. It was a place where you can digitally retail, specifically music.
I mean, I even remember, I think we all were kind of in the same age range. So we remember the time of like buying a CD or, you know, that was really typically how people consume music. But now it's changed so much. So for your guys' jobs, especially coming from terrestrial radio, what was like the learning curve of jumping from like one world to the other? You're more new, Nelson, in the whole like DSP world. Is the environment different? It's so much more technologically based because I mean, I come from a radio background too, and that was really not digitally focused at all. So, you know, Danny, you come from a label where you had to learn with that change too. And you know, your job now heavily, I mean, all of it relies on it, right? What was that change like in both of your careers, going from, you know, what was we traditionally knew for such a long time into the world that we are now?
I guess for me, it was one of those things where when I was looking at the change of what was happening, I felt like terrestrial radio just wasn't moving fast enough. I felt like things were just like kind of like staying put and not really going anywhere. And I remember somebody at a party worked at Pandora and was like, we would never hire somebody from terrestrial radio or like a label because they just don't get it. They don't get where this is going. And that was probably 4 years ago. And then that's where I literally was like, oh, I need to make a change very fast because something is happening where I needed to move forward. And honestly, that's when I went to a startup company, you know, a music startup company. I went to 2 of them and I learned probably the most of like what I'm using now in those environment of startup music, like copyrights and how it all works. And all of that was so interesting to me. And I think for me, it was like that person telling me like everything is changing and we are not going to hire people we're just doing those types of things. Like we need
kind of like stuck in the past.
Exactly. We need visionaries. We need new people that are thinking ahead. And that's kind of how I personally, like, that's where it switched in my own head that I was like, oh, I need to move. I need to make change.
Danny, do you think that your engineering background being so like used to technology and advances in technology, because I mean, technology is changing so fast, right? All the time. Do you think that helped you understand how music was changing too?
Yeah, I think so. But I think it was
or
more
not at all.
No, yeah. I mean, I think it was more the idea that we were studying how to analyze shifts in culture and how they were going to affect each other. I think that's helped a lot. I think it's also pretty unpredictable because, for example, to what you were speaking to, one of the things that has been interesting for me was I got thrown into a dance label, which is the fastest moving thing 5 years ago. Like where all other major labels were still trying really hard to keep up with the speed of like SoundCloud when that was a big platform, or even just people being able to upload things, you know, with 3 to 4 days lead time on DistroKid or TuneCore or any kind of independent distribution. Majors were trying to figure out how to keep up, but they were still kind of lagged. And then dance music was moving so fast. You just put a song up on SoundCloud the day you finished it. You exported it, posted. And so for a long time, we were trying to figure out how to fit that into the new digital model. And now what's funny is we're kind of moving back because of really well-produced shows like Beats One, or I guess the amount of musical information that's existing. We're moving back to a space where you can't just put records out. You have to have 2-3 months of lead time to talk to partners, and you can't just put 5 singles out in a row. You have to do 6 weeks between your singles so that they have room to breathe on the storefronts and room to like develop. And so it's crazy because even over the last 4 years, it was everyone on the label side was like, forget that, we have to get music out tomorrow. And then now everyone is like, wait, we need time to figure this out correctly. So it almost feels like we're going back in that regard. And then I guess you can talk a little bit more about this, but from what I understand, I know Spotify, for example, their big priority for the future is podcasting and radio. And you're obviously producing a show that's like a 24-hour radio. It's kind of going back to that world again. where you have hosts and DJs and playlisters and curators, and people are going to look for that rather than buying it.
And I think the reason that is, it's very correct. And I think the reason why it's happening, it's the conversations that I'm starting to hear a lot more is, let's like actually slow down a little bit. And what's the story behind this song? What's actually happening right now? And what like, where's this artist from? Why do we care? Where, you know, like just the story behind things are like, is now needed, because there's just so many artists that are creating music, you know, because they're all learning from YouTube and like tutorials and things like that. And so like, but let's like give a little bit of care and like really see what made them want to do music, you know. And that's actually something that's been happening a lot lately, where even like the way we're producing the show is taking it back to, let's not do a 2-minute interview with somebody. Let's actually like find out more about them and why and where and when and all of that. And it's been like really cool to see, because I started in radio. I know like it was really cool to get those stories, and now we're kind of doing that again.
What's an artist that you worked with recently where you were like, wow, this person has a dope story?
There's a lot. So I think right now at the moment, literally, I will say in the last 3 weeks, what I'm seeing is what TikTok is doing as moving the needle. It's incredible. Like literally, I'm like mind blown of what's happening right now. Like, so somebody like Suburban who has 1 billion streams on TikTok. To me, that is insane. And we had him in, and cool little kid, like literally like cool little kid that just created things in his bedroom. Is it like actually ringing? Damn.
I was like, it sounds like a robot going.
I'm sorry, couldn't hear it.
Damn, you worked in radio. That's like #1 rule is you can't have your
Damn
phone
it.
on, Nelson. You're
It's
fired.
not on.
You're fired, bro.
Another kid, Ashniko. I think her song "Stupid" is crazy. I love it. I love her story. I love what she's doing. I think she's gonna be a little superstar. It's also one of those things where like, I'm glad we're kind of going back, because I want these kids to thrive and actually like learn how to talk to people. And, you know, I feel like I came from that world of like the superstars that were media trained, that were like given like, this is how you need to answer questions. And now, and that stopped, and it was like, oh, insane. And now we're going back to like, okay, the labels and teams are now being like, let's actually teach you how to talk in person, and like, let's get you out of your bedroom where you've been creating videos and music, and let's actually help you like actually learn how to speak, because your music is doing really well, and we want to continue that story.
But you have to connect with people out there too.
Correct.
So question is, let's say I'm a new artist, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm Cena. I'm putting out my, I'm putting out music, or I'm making music in my bedroom on my computer or whatever. Or I'm starting to get like hot on TikTok. How do I get noticed? How do I get noticed from, Apple Music or a Travis Mills show? How do I get noticed on DSPs or playlists? What's some advice that you would have to give? A lot of artists that are up and coming, or people that want to get into music, have no idea how people even get on a playlist, how you do like New Music Friday or things like that. And you don't need to get super technical, but, break it down for somebody that has no idea.
Personally, I think that now more than ever, it's just about the music. Anyone can make music now, and anyone can have an aesthetic and a brand. And I think what's really cool, in my opinion, about the Spotifys and the Apple Musics and the Deezers is that it's human curated, but it's also human favored. So if you're curating bad music, the people are going to stop listening to your show. And if you're curating bad playlists, people are going to stop following them. And so curators now are really interested in finding music that excites people and that people want to save to their libraries. And I think that goes back to the most rudimentary part of it, which is making really standout music And so that's what I tell most developing artists, and what I was telling them when I was at Owsla, because I was still writing for Nest. So in a similar kind of like parallel lane, people would always ask me like, how do I get press? How do I get noticed? You can only really do that by spending time developing yourself as an artist and actually defining your aesthetic as an artist and who you are as a person and making art that's really unique and different. And to this day, I think that's the only thing that shines through given how much content there is.
Okay, so what do you mean by aesthetic? So let's say I'm so dope. I spit hot fire. My music is lit. Like, it's so damn good. So aesthetic meaning...
I think of Ashniko when you mentioned her. I covered her. I mean, I've been covering her for a couple of years when I was at Nest. It's the same kind of intangible pop star vibe that you got from pop stars in the past. Like, you don't really define Freddie Mercury's aesthetic, right? Like, some people just have
mustache, swag, white, cut off.
Okay, I was like, he wasn't white. Yeah, white
No. You didn't let me finish the sentence.
No, I mean, it's just like it takes time. There's a lot of young artists now, right? And I think they were either children stars who were like developed by companies in the past, or it was artists who, I mean, they were in like their 20s, 30s, developing their bands for years in their garage, and then they got noticed at a show and they were kind of like rolled out.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm interested to hear, your thoughts, but for me, it's really about taking the time, because you can get viral tomorrow, which is what's happening now. Is kids go on TikTok, they get super famous. They're not seasoned musicians. They don't know how to go on talk shows. They don't know how to perform. They can all of a sudden sell out the El Rey, and their show is terrible because they haven't ever toured, right? So I think it's about patience and like developing yourself
Honing
and taking
your craft.
time. Yeah, playing shows, playing local shows, getting involved in like local communities, figuring out how you dress, how you are, like who you are.
Nelson, do you think that's important? Is that how you book people for Travis Mill show?
To go back to, I think music, right? So that's the first thing. On the radio show, you're not going to be able to see what you look like, right? So the song, the music has to be great. And I think that's the first thing that I look at. Like, I also have my own rules on like, when somebody sends me music, I don't look at their Instagram. I don't look at any, like, I don't want to base it off numbers. Like, and that's just been my own personal rule of.
Do you think everybody follows that rule?
No, because I think it's, at the end of the day, things are businesses, right? We're business. So you want to drive people to come look at somebody that has millions of followers. Like, that's everybody, right? So that's terrestrials now changing that way too, where they're like giving a spotlight to the, YouTuber with millions of, so it's, I think we're going up and down with that. Like, I just personally don't want to do that. I want to make sure I look at the story and the music, and not to, to my own horn, but like, I feel like
you can toot your own horn.
No. But I was
okay.
gonna say, like, to me, Beats One is specifically, they really love emerging artists and they love new artists and they love to like kind of help tell that story and be part of that story and not necessarily be all about the hype. And like, my show's a little different too, because it is also catering to the TikTok and to those kids right now. So, but I try to do a mixture of all of it, right? I really do. But what I was gonna say is, I think what's really exciting right now is that an artist can actually create whatever they want to create, and they can create it themselves. Like, there is no rules. There is no like, do it this way or do it that way. It's one of those things where I always think about, like, if you're in a field with like all these cows and there's like pink cow, you're going to notice the pink cow because they did something different. So to me, to get noticed is do something outside of
the pink cow.
Exactly. Be the pink cow. Like,
is that gonna be the name of the episode?
Yeah. Be the pink cow.
Be the
I
pink
want
cow.
hashtag be the pink cow to trend
and
on Twitter.
And it's all about like the way your visuals look, the way you look, the way you present yourself, the way, all of that. But I also like, there is no rules anymore. It's literally like, just stand out somehow. Make your own wave, make your own thing. Like, it's just kind of cool to see what's happening, because in my own conversations at work, they're like, let's create a lane for who you are, what your show is. And I'm like, my lane is that there is no lane. I want it to be the artist that came in yesterday, I want it to be different from the one that came today. And I will say, in all honesty, what you do need is a team. So like an artist does need somebody to kind of like have a relationship. And that's just the honest truth. You have to have relationships with different shows, with different people. And I
A
think
team like what? Like a
like
manager?
you need a manager or a publicist, because not anymore am I like, there's so many independent artists that are doing it themselves, but like it's best when they have somebody that's pitching their stuff. Be very specific with like what you want. So know the brand you're going for. Like for me, it would be like, hey, this artist would be great on Travis's show because you kind of had an artist that kind of was similar. So to me, I like literally, I'm like, oh, dope. They took their time to kind of just be like, hey, this would be really cool for you guys.
And not just going, here's my music, just putting it
Exactly.
every single place.
There has to be a
That's
strategy
smart.
behind that. Maybe you might not know the person personally, but at least you know the brand. And so if you know the brand, then you're kind of able to be like, hey, this really would make sense for you. And I, you know, I do take my time to listen to music. So when I listen to music and I'm like, oh, they literally have no idea what the show is about. You know, when they give me like, I don't know, as somebody that I'm like, I would never play this. Not because it's not bad. It's just not
Your show.
not our show, you know? And I'm really good at being like, hey, this doesn't actually make sense for my show, but here, let me connect you to this person. That might make more sense.
That's because you're a good guy, Nelson.
And I also, like, the thing is like, in my own, like, brain, I have this thing where I think, like, music, if it's not my taste, but that doesn't mean that it's bad, you know what I mean, or good. So I'm like, this kid put their art and made art, and who am I to judge this kid's art? So like, I try, like, if it's not my style, I try to give them somewhere where it might fit a little bit better, because I just think, you know, he took his time to make art, you know, and so I want somebody to like listen and maybe it will make sense. I don't know. That's my own brain.
Danny, when you take a song and pitch it for playlisting, are you really considering what types of playlists you're trying to get them on?
I think there's two like important things here. I think there's one is like getting the DSPs to notice on their own, right? Which for emerging artists really has to do with their community, which I think goes back to like one, making good music, period. And then two, really interfacing with other artists in their domain. And like when you have friends who are making music who are also noticed by DSPs and they're supporting your music and you guys are playing shows together and you guys are, right, like that kind of community usually gets them noticed. But then the other side is having someone like me who's pitching music, like you said, who has relationships. But I guess when I pitch, the most important thing, like he said, was research. There's not, and I think my first experience with that was when I was getting pitched, when I was writing for Nest, is there's certain ways that you communicate with different people. And there's like, you know, there's nothing worse than getting a pitch that you can tell is copy pasted for 100 different publications, or one that you can tell they meant to send to a, you know, like a Rolling Stones or like a rock magazine. And you're like, okay, well, we cover dance music, so this is never going to work. And I think because there's so many pitches coming through to all these curators and to your team, you kind of have like the 3-strike rule is probably too many strikes. You kind of have like one or two before people are like, I don't really want to see emails from this person anymore.
You mean a couple strikes of them sending emails that don't make sense for you?
Yeah, or like, you know, I'm really careful about not badgering people because there's so much, you know, like if you're hounding someone like 5, 6, 7 follow-ups, like, hey, have you heard my song? Have you heard my song? And then eventually it's like, I have so much to do. You have to be really respectful of the fact that people on the DSP side, on the radio side, are getting pitched thousands of songs a week and they need time and they're going to get to it, right? So I guess my biggest no would be don't overdo it. Do your research.
Really? Hounding people doesn't work. Sometimes there's 1 in a million that works that way, right?
Well, what I'll say to that is there's ways of hounding, right? So like one of the things is the initial pitch, right? Pitch me something. If I don't get to it, the next pitch should be numbers. It should be like, hey, this song is actually doing really well here and here. Like, if you have time, check it out. And that, like, that really will help me, because I'm like, oh shit, like I missed something, and now I'm kind of a little bit late on it. Let me get on it right away. So that's like a really cool way of like coming back to an email, coming back to that artist as a pitch.
For sure. Yeah. Definitely, if you're going to follow up, always follow up with new information.
Not with just, hey,
yeah,
hey,
exactly.
Notice me.
Yeah. And a lot of the time, in my experience, not everyone gets back to me all the time, but they did read it and they did listen, and then they do end up supporting. Right. So I think be patient with curators, be patient with developing your artist's platform. So like take time to build your metrics organically. Like people need to remember that you have to build a streaming like foundation, right? You have to have followers on Spotify and Apple Music, and you have to have listeners on both of the platforms, any of the platforms, right? If you're, zeros across the board, you don't have any streams on Deezer, and then you pitch Deezer music, they have no idea who you are. Right. And even if your story's cool and the music is good, they also have other cool stories and other good music with a foundation of streaming that they can kind of rely on and be like, okay, I could play this. I love the music.
So it'll put you ahead of somebody that's not doing that.
Exactly.
Just by having that foundation.
Yeah. And it's just about being well-rounded, like you said. And a lot of that comes from having a good team who understands this kind of stuff and can lead you. And then if you don't have a good team, then surrounding yourself within the community of artists so that you're all supporting each other, and their fans are coming to you, your fans are going to them, and you guys are building and building, and a lot of the ways that like the Brockhamptons of the world come about from like internet communities, and they're building a streaming foundation on their own, and then they get noticed, and then they get put on, or how people are doing on TikTok, right?
But that is I think to me, one of the really coolest things that I've seen lately is the collectives and the people that are like helping each other. Brockhampton, for example, like the amount of people that I've noticed coming out of that, and it just like it helps me to know like Brockhampton has a specific fan base that they're definitely streaming, right? So like for example, Ryan Beatty, or Deb Never, who came in our constant collaborators with Brockhampton, like those two, for me, I was like, I paid attention even more because of what they were doing with them, even if they didn't have numbers, but it was the collective that helped them kind of help me be like, oh, if they're fucking with them, then I should probably be paying attention a little bit more. So, and they have great music.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know what I mean? It like they don't mess around with people that are not creating great stuff, and they both are creating something. And it was a collective that kind of helped me see them even more, and pay attention even more.
Nice. So, I mean, that's a lot of good advice. I'm excited to drop my mixtape now. I'm going to have a whole look. I'm going to hire a PR person, a manager. I'm going to get a bunch of girls and create my own female Brockhampton. And I'm going to be on the Travis Mills show coming up soon.
Let me see.
Yeah. Can you pencil me in, Nelson? Damn. Well, thank you guys so much. I feel like that's a lot of not just advice, but, info, like even for myself, even about you guys and how you even got here. So thank you guys for dropping by.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This was really fun.
This was really fun.
I'm
kind of bummed it's over.
I know. I could do this forever. Can you edit out my breathing in and out? Because I could feel like it's just
I can hear myself too.
Yeah,
you didn't breathe in and out.
I literally stopped breathing at certain times because I was like, I don't want to be the chubby guy that's like breathing.
Oh my God.
In and out.
You weren't at all. I couldn't hear that.
And also I was hungry and I could hear my stomach. So can you edit that out as well?
I asked you if you wanted something. You said no.
No. I have a specific thing I'm going to go get afterwards. So.
What are you going to wait? What are you going to go get?
Tacos.
You're going to Guisados or what?
I thought about it, but no, I'm going to go to King Tacos.
Oh, I've never been there.
I've never
Is it
been there
nearby?
either.
No, it's not nearby.
Oh, okay.
No, it's downtown.
It's in downtown.
Got it. That's nearby.
Downtown shorty, she a lick up too. She a kick up a lot, chat with your ooh. Damn, when I drip, lick up ooh. Like a lick up ting, when I lick up boo. Then my lover that I wake up to. What's a 10 on 9, 10 on 2. Pang, she hours, she tick and fool. Go down on it.